Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Miller, I'd like to also pick up on the theme of temporary judgeships that Senator Hirono was talking about just a minute ago and talk a little bit about how making temporary judgeships permanent might be one way forward here. It doesn't necessarily implicate some of the issues that creating new judicial seats does. So let me just give you an opportunity to expand on this theme. Could you first explain to us, maybe, Judge, how a temporary judgeship works and why Congress might decide to create a temporary judgeship instead of a permanent one?
Well, as I understand it, Senator, if a district is having an increase in cases or in weighted filings, but the Congress is not sold that those filings will last for an indefinite period of time, Congress might feel like there is a spike in cases that might come down. And so Congress might decide to, instead of creating a permanent judgeship, it would create a temporary judgeship, and those judgeships last for 10 years. And then once the time expires, when someone leaves office or someone retires or someone takes senior status, the next vacancy is not filled. The problem we have here is that with the 8 temporary judgeships that we've asked to have made permanent, with those 8 judgeships, the caseloads have continued to grow or just as high now as they were when those judgeships were created. And so in each one of those districts, including the Eastern District of Missouri, those judgeships, we requested those judgeships be made.
Yeah, very good. And thank you for pointing out that the Eastern District of Missouri is one of the now temporary judgeships that you recommend making permanent, which I certainly support. And just if you could reiterate for us again, you just said, I think, why it is you recommend that the 8 out of the 10, that these 8 be made permanent. And you mentioned the consistent caseload. Just if you would explain that again, why is it important? Why have out of the 10, why have you asked for these 8 in particular, including the one in the Eastern District of Missouri, to be made permanent?
Well, Senator, you probably know, our standard is 430 weighted cases per judge with the additional judgeship. So the the districts in question, those 8 districts all meet that standard. And not only do they meet that standard of having 430 weighted cases per judge, they exceed that standard. And so when we look at, and I'll narrow it down to say a district like the Eastern District of Missouri, they far exceed the standard. And so there's no question that those judgeships are needed in those districts and that there's no reason for them to ever expire.
And these are judgeships for which there's already an existing judge who has been confirmed by the Senate. So we don't have the issue of worrying over which party will get to fill the seat if the judgeships are made permanent. Is that right? I mean, we've already got judges in the seats, and they've already been Senate confirmed.
Yes, and the way it works is that if a vacancy is created through retirement, if a judge passes away, if a judge takes senior status, then once the judgeship expires, you just wouldn't fill that seat. It would vanish, so to speak.
And I would just note that there is existing bipartisan legislation led by Senator Moran of Kansas, which I support, which would implement some of these recommendations and make a number of these temporary judgeships permanent. Thank you, Judge, for your work on this. And thank you, Mr. Adams, as well, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.